Moves directly into The Flash, a fantastic movie that I really love.
You serious?
The Flash is an absolute trash movie. I want to do everything I can do right now to deter you from seeing it. Don't believe any of the hype. It is absolute nonsense. This is not only a disappointing film, and I didn't even believe the hype in the first place, it is a horrible, horrible film. I was angry at this movie. I hated it. I wanted to leave the theater. It is this bad. And while I go symbiote, Spider-Man, Bully Maguire on you, let me explain exactly why. The first fundamental problem with this movie is Ezra Miller. And no, I'm not talking about his crimes in real life, even though if you add that, it makes everything about this movie infinitely worse. But no, Ezra Miller is one of the worst castings in comic book movie history. He is right up there with Jared Leto as the Joker. But now imagine if DC, after the first movie with Jared Leto, decided, let's give Jared Leto's Joker an entire movie to himself. And not only that, let's give him a doppelganger so we can have two Jared Leto's Jokers in the same movie. That is what happens with Ezra Miller. I never cared for him as the Flash. I always found him annoying and off-putting, even when he was just appearing as a side character. He's never been funny, he's always been cringy, and you just get him through the entire movie, where you get the first Ezra Miller and then he meets his doppelganger from the past, who's a more immature version of himself who does not have the tragedy to ground him. And he's intentionally annoying. He does this ridiculous giraffe-like kind of laugh through the entire thing, like, ah! He keeps doing that over and over and over again, and the movie acknowledges that it's annoying, but they also want you to like him and find him endearing. No, he's just complete cringe, complete annoying, and that's what you get through the entire film. Ezra Miller is so terrible as Barry Allen. Could not stand his voice, could not stand the way he was acting, and he's really not that great. He couldn't even really sell the emotional moments. But this movie relies on you caring about this character so that the emotional beats play out. So I just ended up feeling nothing for his plight or for anything that he was going through. I didn't care what happened to him. It also makes it pretty bad that this is sort of the flashpoint, the big epic conclusion of the DCEU, but we don't have the development and build-up to justify that. They want you to really, really invest in this version of a character that we've barely gotten to know, and he's just the worst version of the character ever. But you have to understand that it's not just a performance. This entire movie, the tone, is based off of Ezra Miller's comedy. And what kind of comedy that is. In the beginning, we get an excruciatingly long scene where Ezra Miller, and I'm just calling him Ezra Miller, not the Flash. Okay, we'll call him the Flash. The Flash has to rescue babies falling from a building, but the CGI is so terrible that they look like globs. But this represents the kind of humor style the movie has. In very slow motion, we have to watch the Flash rescue all these babies, and at one point, because he explains that he can't actually carry someone at super speed, he pushes one into a microwave that he just used to heat up a burrito. It is so uncomfortable and awkward. But that's the kind of humor you get throughout this movie. You go to the younger Barry's house and he's got two of his roommates sleeping together in the room that he's staying in. He's got another man in there who's just sitting there in his underwear who's intentionally disgusting. There's nudity, there's barfing. It's all this kind of gross, crass, even feeling a little bit pervy style of humor throughout the movie. I think that represents Ezra Miller perfectly. But like I said, Ezra Miller is within every molecule of this movie, from the tone to the dialogue to the main character, who we have to stay with constantly and hear from constantly and constantly look at things from their perspective. It's why the movie made me feel so uncomfortable and made me want to leave, and why I think that most people aren't going to like this movie, because of the comedy that is so terrible, that is constant. But that comedy also gets interrupted sometimes, where they really, really want you to be invested in these emotional moments or a big action sequence, and they'll just sort of intrude in all of a sudden, and you just feel nothing for them, because most of this movie is the Ezra Miller vibe. But of course, as we all know, they tried to salvage this movie by giving cameos and appearance from beloved versions of characters. We'll get to Michael Keaton in a second, but in the beginning we get to see Ben Affleck's Batman and Wonder Woman, and their cameos are awful. Ben Affleck feels like he doesn't want to be there, but at one point Wonder Woman shows up to save him, and it is so cringy. Remember, if you guys have seen Shazam 2 and you see that Wonder Woman shows up there, the same thing happens in this movie. You know, I think that Wonder Woman's theme is great and it works for action sequences, but it doesn't work when she just sort of casually shows up. But in this movie, she casually shows up to to save Batman, and all of a sudden you've got that Wonder Woman theme just blaring, and it's just so cringy, and Gal Gadot has not turned in a good performance since Wonder Woman 2017, and she's so awkward in this film when she shows up. Then they do this thing that's completely out of character where Batman, who's all of a sudden starts getting kind of awkward and like he's got a crush on Wonder Woman, he and Barry accidentally touch the lasso of truth, and Batman starts spewing out all the truth about himself of, oh, I'm just doing this because of my childhood trauma, which Diana thinks is funny, which I don't believe any of this is in character. Then Batman blurts out, I really should just be using all my money to end poverty in the city. First of all, that made me so upset because that is a perspective from Twitter about Batman from non-Batman fans. Like, oh, why doesn't Batman just use all of his money to stop the crime in Gotham? As if the villains of Gotham are solely motivated by money.
All you care about is money. It's not about money. It's about sending a message.
But this movie is playing it like Batman actually thinks that. But no, if he actually thought that, he would be using his money to save the city. But that's what his parents were doing right before they got killed. So that is a line written by somebody who does not understand these characters at all. Probably Christina Hodson, who's credited as the main writer, who also wrote Birds of Prey. You know, maybe Christina Hodson is a lovely person and a great writer elsewhere, but she does not understand how to do comic book stuff. But let's get to the rest of the cameos. The big appearance in this movie is Michael Keaton's Batman, but let me tell you, I have no nostalgic attachment to that version of Batman. I didn't grow up with those movies. When I went back to watch them, I did not care for them, and I really tried to like them, so I am not at all influenced by nostalgia by seeing him here. And I gotta tell you, he doesn't work at all. The way he's introduced, I was wondering if even the fans would even like that, because he's just introduced as this old man in flip-flops who can still really fight. It looks really odd, but what really doesn't work about it for me is that he's using this old 80s aesthetic and rubber suits and all of that in a universe where that really doesn't fit in. Michael Keaton worked in the Tim Batman universe where that was stylized, but he's in a universe now that's not stylized by Tim Burton, so he looks odd. And he's in a modern universe where you've got the Flash from the Snyderverse, you've got a Supergirl who's from this new universe, and it just feels like a hodgepodge, seeing all those old designs from the 80s and the rubber suits that they really emphasize and even make fun of. This is a bit more of an extreme example, but imagine if you took Adam West's 60s Batman with the gadgets and all of that and shoved it into a modern day movie. It wouldn't work at all, not with the tone, not with the gadgets, not with the style, and that's what Michael Keaton feels like. It just feels shoehorned and odd. People have been comparing this to No Way Home, and some people complained about No Way Home and said it was just pandery and it was just using the key jangling to get fans involved. This movie is everything that people complain about No Way Home. No Way Home at least integrated all of its cameos into its story and tried to expand on those characters. Michael Keaton is just here, and all of the other cameos are just sprinkles on this to try to salvage that this is actually a terrible movie. Speaking of cameos, we later get some cameos from George Reeves and Christopher Reeves and the woman who played Supergirl in those movies, but guess what? Those people are dead, so they use really, really bad CGI versions of them. And it's a scene where you just see all these bubbles looking into different universes, and for some reason these characters are just standing there. Most of them just go like this. For some reason, it's absolutely terrible and cynical, and I can't imagine being an actor who maybe you've done work that you are proud of, and you pass away, and then you get your likeness taken and plastered onto this horrible movie just to get people interested in it. It's just terrible to me. But since we're on the subject of CGI, this is the worst CGI I have seen in any modern day movie. Things in this movie look like a PlayStation 2 cutscene at best, or maybe we get up to PlayStation 3. But the real problem with it is this movie relies so much on CGI. They clearly slashed the budget like mid-production, so they couldn't finish it. There are so many sequences in this movie that were purely conceived to just be CGI, and they couldn't finish them, and it looks terrible, and it took me out of the movie so many times. My light just went out. Even things like the way Flash runs, I think that any other thing I've ever seen that's done super speed has done it better than this. Flash runs where he's basically like taking a giant step, propelling along like really, really fast, and it looked really weird, and he looked like maybe one of those animatronic models you might see on an exercise equipment that explains to you how to run. It looked really awkward and bad, and there's a scene in the movie where he comes through time for the first time, but it's only his head looking out, and it looks just laughable. But apparently, according to the directors, hey guys, we intended the CGI to look bad. No, you didn't. Please stop acting like your audience is stupid. Supergirl was okay. She was stoic, I guess. She was barely in the movie. want to go back to tone for a minute, there's a scene where it's really dramatic, I don't care about spoilers, where Supergirl discovers that Zod killed Kal-El as a baby, and it's really heart-wrenching, and she like grabs him and is so angry, and then it hard cuts to the scene where Batman's ship is flying, and you've got the theme blaring like da 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 da, and it's just like so, it just destroys the tone of the movie. Keaton dies, by the way, but as he dies, he smiles and says, "I'm not bothered, you guys brought me back." And that felt like a meta thing talking to the fans once again. It did not fit tonally at all. It was terrible. There was no reason for Michael Keaton's Batman to be the Batman of this movie. And how the movie ends, well, Barry's in a different universe now, but apparently it's a universe where George Clooney is Batman because we all wanted to see him again, so there isn't even any clarity about what universe the DCEU is going to be in going forward. But by the way, as the title of this video suggests, I don't want to see a DCEU movie anymore. I don't want to see a DC movie anymore. This movie made me just so tired of it all. I am so tired of going to these trash DC films and having them jangle the keys. This one's gonna be good, guys, and having me fooled to go see it and then getting burned each time. This is the problem when you overhype a film, and I didn't even believe the hype of this film. I thought, you know, it's not gonna be the greatest superhero movie of all time. It's probably just gonna be decent but flawed. No, I didn't expect it to be one of the worst films. It is the worst film I've seen all year. I absolutely hated this movie. Did not stay for the dumb post-credit scene because I didn't want to, even though I usually always do. Never want to see this film again. It was gross. I'm not going to go see Blue Beetle. I'm not going to go see Aquaman. I'm not going to see any of these nonsense movies. I am so tired of the zombified corpse of this universe that is DC. I am just done with it. So yeah, 0 out of 10. I'm sorry. It's more like a 1 out of 10 movie. Never want to see it again. DC is just terrible. This zombified corpse of a universe. They have to work so hard right now to win people back, and they should just be focusing on getting the Batman sequel made and making Superman Legacy really good. You don't need to worry about another Batman film directed by the guy who did this movie, who can't even balance tones. You don't need to worry about having an interconnected universe. Just make sure you make 1 or even 2 good movies to bring some consumer confidence back, because I can't remember the last time I watched a DC movie that wasn't a complete and unmitigated disaster. I am so done with this, and I guess I'm so done with this review. What did you guys think of The Flash? Let me know your comments down below. Ezra Miller should be in jail, not mouthing off at Hollywood premieres. He should not have come back as this character in the first place. If you guys are interested in this channel, please like, subscribe, support me on Patreon. Thank you. Patreon J, as always, costs only $5 to support me on that platform. And as always, you can check out my own playlist of short films. My short film, The Purple Hand, released very recently, so you can check out that if you are interested in that. And I've got more great videos coming up in the future. But that's all I got for you today, and I will see you guys next time.